The startup scenario in India is flourishing right now, and yet we do not have too many Indian startups breaking international grounds. To know the reason why, we have Mukund Mohan, Director, Microsoft Ventures, with us today, who has helped more than 52 startups gain momentum through his accelerator program here. So Mukund, why do majority of the Indian startups struggle to garner global opportunity?
So I think overall, if you look at entrepreneurship in India itself, over the last 6 to 8 years, we've gone from 200-300 entities on the technology entrepreneurial startups being formed to about 1,300 entities now. And increasingly, the number of companies that are competing on a global basis has gone from 3 to 5% of those to nearly about 10% of those. The first reason why most Indian entrepreneurs focus on India itself is because they lack market knowledge. They lack customer access, and they lack the experience to be able to understand how their product or their service can solve a problem for a local market in another place, whether it is US, whether it is Europe, whether it's Japan or any other place outside of India. Obviously, when they don't have market knowledge, when they don't have customer access, and when they do not have visibility into the customer problems themselves, they tend to focus on problems that are largely local in nature, which is one of the big reasons why you'll find that most Indian startups don't do a very good job of sizing up the market very well before they go to market. They just don't have access to that much information, that much data.
Well, internet is flooded with market intelligence, as you know, and yet not too many people are using that to their benefit. What do you think are the 3 reasons that's holding them back?
So the top 3 reasons why most Indian entrepreneurs maybe don't access as much information that is available. Number 1, most of the information that is needed to be able to do a good both top-down analysis of the market and a bottom-up analysis of the market is not available in primary research. So they'll have to take data from 3, 4, sometimes more than 10 different places, be able to synthesize that data, normalize the information, and then eventually go ahead and create a business model or a thinking model around how that data needs to be visualized. Now, given that an entrepreneur has so many things to do, they have to focus on getting customers, they have to focus on building product, they have to focus on getting a great UI, they have to focus on making sure that if they're building a mobile app, they have to get into the app store. There are so many things that are going on, so the last thing that they would focus on typically tends to be the market access and market information.
According to reports, 41% of B2B and 40% of B2C startups are facing problems in generating leads and closing deals. What do you think is the big challenge despite of having a path-breaking product for these startups?
If you look at the focus that a lot of Indian entrepreneurs have, because of the fact that they are comfortable building the product, they end up spending a lot of time, energy and effort on building the product itself. So they think of the building of the company and building of the business as a step-by-step process where you build the product first, then you acquire customers, and then you build the business. So they spend a lot of time and effort and energy in the first few, sometimes months, sometimes years, just on building product. So what happens is when they get to the point of having a product that is, they believe, somewhat ready, then the next focus is, let me go acquire customers. So since it tends to be the step after, they typically tend to scramble a lot. In India, I think there is not also a very good understanding of what it takes to actually acquire a customer and the list of steps that it takes to be able to get someone who can actually use your product, find value from it, and then pay for it. So typically what happens is the reason why a lot of B2B and B2C customers, like you said, or startups, like you said, are looking for lead generation as a key mechanism to be able to help get more customers is because they're thinking of that step after. Most of them realize that it's much easier for them to build the product and do it within their own offices rather than go out and talk to a customer. So I think that's one of the big reasons why. Are there resources that are available? There are a few resources that are available in India, not many. But I think overall the big challenge for most Indian startups typically tends to be that having finished the development effort, how do you now scale quickly enough to get enough customers to be able to buy the product, pay them for it, and then rapidly scale from there?
Well, Mukund, for startups, social media is one of the major sources for marketing as well as acquiring customers. And according to reports, even though 89% of small and medium businesses use content marketing and find social media effective, 56% do not focus on analyzing content and data available on the web. Now, what is the key advice for startups that you have who are using social media to optimize their ROI?
So I think there's an age-old question that almost always we focus on when startups are being formed, which is the number one capability and the number one indicator of success in selling is someone who has a relationship. So if you have a relationship with a potential customer, there is a 90% likelihood that the customer would buy from you versus somebody that they do not have a relationship with. And social media is one of the easiest and most effective ways to build a relationship that scales a lot better than one-on-one discussions with every customer that is a potential prospect of yours. So I would advise the three most important things I'd say to a startup is build, I have an old saying that goes like this, it's dig your well before you're thirsty. Even before you need to go ahead and need those access and relationships with customers, you should start engaging with them, whether it's on LinkedIn, whether it's on Twitter, whether it's on Facebook or any other mechanism, to be able to start asking questions of customers, finding out what their requirements might be, finding out what problems they actually face, and what solutions might actually help them. That's the first thing. The second thing is, how do you keep them engaged on an ongoing basis? And content marketing has proven fairly effective. If there is something that you know that the potential customer can be educated about, then you should obviously share that with them. Because in most cases, you'll find an educated customer is a lot more interesting customer to have than someone who's coming in fairly blind. The third important thing is, now that you've targeted them, now that you've engaged with them, how do you make sure that they can tell others? How do you increase the capability for you to get more viral movement of both your content and awareness of your company to other people? That typically comes from making sure that the content by itself tends to be a lot of use to them. And number two, make it easy so that they can share it with others. So I find in a lot of cases, even now, even though people create very, very good content, it's still in a PDF format that is downloaded. And it's very, very hard to be able to share with somebody else. So which is why you'll find that increasing number of people are going away from things like white papers and things of that nature, making it just snack ready, easy to consume content. Those are the three most important things.
Well, thanks for that, Mukund. And what do you think are the specific areas that startups could use big data to accelerate their growth?
I think there are two key parts that are important for startups to be able to leverage. The first part is making sure that you can get data that is relevant, valid, useful, and current. In most cases, you'll find that current information tends to be very expensive, which is why reports from your Gartners and your Forresters and ABI research or Canalys tends to be very, very expensive, because they're spending a lot of effort, time, and energy on building the report, which is why they cost on an average upwards of $500, if not even $1,000 to $1,500. Current information tends to be very, very relevant, difficult to get, and also very, very expensive. So the alternative to that, a lot of startups take shortcuts. And when they take shortcuts, you will get access to information that might be widely different and difficult to be able to justify when you do both a top-down or a bottom-up analysis. Most startups, when we invest in those companies, we ask them to do both. It's important to know that if you capture 1% of a large $2 billion market, then it'll be a fairly large market. But it's also important to find out the number of seats from the bottom, or the number of people who would actually use it. What is the propensity for them to pay? What are the alternative solutions that they've paid for at what cost? And hence, what could be a potential target market and addressable market as well. That's the first part. The second part of it, which is also important, is to be able to leverage the big data that is available to either put into their marketing plans for social media, or to be able to also put them into the plans for them to put strategies around social media campaigns. They need talent that actually understands how to do it. In most of these companies, we just don't have that talent yet, right? So it takes a lot of effort, time, and energy for someone who's a founder, who's been asked to do marketing, who's been asked to do development, who's been asked to do customer development, who's been asked to do sales, he's been asked to do finance. There's nothing that we don't ask the founder to do. So there's so many things you have to do. What will you end up doing, right? So they take the thing that is the most difficult to do and push it away. They take the thing that is the most easiest to do, which is product development, and do it first.
And how could startups spot an opportunity that would excite investors?
So I think as an investor, first I'd give you the perspective that usually 1% to 5% of the total addressable market needs to be validated for you to get a model that is consistent. As an entrepreneur, it's a much lower number. It's probably between 0.1% to 1%, because if I have 1 to 5% of the market anyway, then I'm at the point of scale. So I think from an entrepreneur's perspective, it's important for you to say this segment of customer, let's say it is 1 million customers who are willing to spend $10 a month. That's a $10 million on a monthly basis opportunity. then typically you want to be able to get as many of these from a repetitive fashion that you can see scaled. Doing more of the same will actually get you to that point anyway. So I think that's the key part of figuring out what is it that it takes to be able to have a small enough number that gives you confidence, but have a large enough number that gives you the ability to scale rapidly. So somewhere in between 0.1% to 5%, depending on what entrepreneurs want to do at the minimum level to what investors want at the highest level, is where the actual answer lies.
So according to you, Mukund, how do market intelligence companies like Daysinfo help startups to consume more meaningful insights to better their way and make them scale up?
So I think there are two elements of things that are important to look at. Number one is standard information that almost everybody needs, but in subsets. So I'll give a good example of one company that does that. It's a company called CB Insights. CB Insights takes information for venture capital leverage, but they give you a slice of that information, maybe less than 1% of it, to everybody to consume. So for example, they might come back and say, of the 500 top investors in the VC land, here are the top 10. And if you want to get the remaining 490, which are the ones that you really have to be able to understand a lot better, then you want to subscribe to their service. So I think there's one element of it, which is how do you provide some teaser portion of the information that people can consume in a simple enough fashion to be able to get an understanding that here's the rest of what would be useful for them. The second part is how do you actually give them specific knowledge and specific information that is relevant for their opportunity. This typically happens when you would get someone who's an investor more particularly involved, because that is a forcing function. The investor wants to know what the size of your market is. In most cases, entrepreneurs are happy even if they don't know the exact size of the market, as long as they think that the opportunity is large. So that's not going to be so then in that case, market information and big data and marketing intelligence becomes a nice to have, not a must have. The forcing function typically is if they have to go raise money outside, or if they have to be able to go ahead and justify more expenditure in their own company from the profits that they might earn in the company. So let's assume I'm selling something for $5 and 500 rupees, and it actually cost me $1 or 100 rupees to actually make. That means I'm getting 400 rupees in profit. If I do this for about a few months, then I get a significant amount of money in the company that I can now invest towards building new products. If they want to be able to invest in specific areas, products or services, they have to find out how much should I invest and what is the potential. That's the other forcing function. The forcing function typically will be they have to be able to do investment of some sort, either their own money or external money. So that's the point when custom requirements might be more relevant, more helpful. So more examples of how people have used business intelligence, market information and market research, and show how the difference was to the company because of those investments made from companies like Daysinfo helps a lot more to the startups.
Thanks a lot. I think that's something that we've got a lot of information on to crunch.